Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Temperatures are due to rise over the next few days and it will be turning hot, particularly in the south, by Monday and Tuesday. But even today, it will be a warmer day than yesterday, and that's partly due to lighter winds. Those winds will still be blowing in a few showers across the very far north of Scotland through the next few hours and perhaps even to the early part of the afternoon. But the vast majority of the UK will have a dry day, plenty of sunshine, and that sunshine really lifting the temperatures quite quickly. So by this afternoon, widely temperatures in the mid-20s across England and Wales, perhaps as high as 28 degrees Celsius in the Greater London region, and even the low 20s across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. Temperatures will remain in the low 20s as we go into this evening, with unbroken sunshine from many parts of southern England through this evening. Light winds as well, so feeling pleasantly warm right the way through this evening. But we will run into a bit more in the way of cloud across Northern Ireland and in particular western Scotland. Here there'll be some showery outbreaks of rain developing later this afternoon and more especially this evening. And that rain will turn increasingly persistent across the Western Highlands as we go towards this evening. So a pretty damp night is in store for Northern Ireland and parts of Scotland, and maybe some rain fringing into the north of England at times, particularly Cumbria and Northumberland. Otherwise, further south, clear skies for many southern and central parts of England and Wales. And here, well, there may always be a little bit of patchy mist in the countryside once again, but I think temperatures will be higher than they were last night, so generally a milder night to come, and temperatures holding up in the teens Celsius for many of us. So a north-south split in the weather on Monday. You can see a lot of cloud across many parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland and Northern England. Some showery outbreaks of rain off and on. And that rain will be fairly persistent for much of the day across the Western Highlands and the northwest of Scotland. Otherwise, though, England and Wales seeing plenty of sunshine, a bit of high-level cloud in the sky at times, and one or two late afternoon thunderstorms across the southwest, but turning hot inland with temperatures into the low 30s.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
You've read the headlines, you've heard what those in power have to say. How about now we actually get to the truth?
They would pay attention.
We go beyond the political theatre and tell you what's really going on behind the scenes. For a massive council tax hike, one of the biggest in the UK. Others follow their lines, but we go off script.
You sound like a broken record. You say that week after week.
Cutting through the narratives and giving you unique perspectives. That's Ben Leo tonight, Saturdays and Sundays from 9 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, weekdays from 9 p.m.
What on earth is going on at our university? So Professor Stephen Greer had worked for the University of Bristol for 36 years when his career was halted after a false accusation of Islamophobia. The issue arose when Greer taught about the Charlie Hebdo attacks during a human rights module, and a student who didn't actually attend the course complained. Well, I'm delighted now to be joined by Stephen Greer himself to explain what happened. Stephen, thank you very much. Tremendous to have you on the show. Can you just explain the circumstances that led up to you being accused of Islamophobia, please?
Well, out of the blue, or almost out of the blue, I received a complaint about a module I'd been teaching on a human rights unit, entitled Islam, China and the Far East, for nearly 15 years without incident. Which included the increasing critical literature about human rights issues in Islam, China, and the Far East. And my principally, as I said, the principal complaint, it did include a complaint about Charlie Hebdo, but the principal complaint was about the fact that I had referred students to the authoritative academic literature. And the student who complained was the president of BRISOC, the University of Bristol Islamic Society, who was a medical student who'd not attended any of the course himself, and he claimed to be acting on behalf of anonymous students. And there were all kinds of other procedural irregularities in the complaint, but the university decided to entertain it anyway. Okay. And I was exonerated after a 5-month inquiry. Then the university said, well, they were publicly announced. They took the module off the syllabus.
GB News, the People's Channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here We do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning and welcome to the Camilla Tominey Show with me, Christopher Hope. Now, Parliament may be in recess, but politics hasn't paused. It never does it? Here's what's coming up on today's programme. Rosie Wrighting, Labour MP for Kettering, joins us to discuss the government's plan for change, as foreign criminals will now face immediate deportation after sentencing for the first time. I'll also get her take on the PM's decision potentially to recognise Palestine as a state as soon as next month, and ongoing protests up and down the nation with more than 470 people arrested in support of Palestine action. From the opposition benches, we're hearing from the chairman of the Public Accounts Committee and the Tory MP for North Cotswolds, Sir Geoffrey Clifton-Brown. I'll be getting his reaction to the conflicts in Ukraine and Gaza and how he thinks Rachel Reeves can turn the economy around. National security advisors from Europe and Ukraine and the US met yesterday to discuss how an end can be brought to the war in Ukraine. We'll get expert analysis from former senior NATO official Nicholas Williams. And the Bank of England cut the UK interest rate to 4% on Thursday. Economist Julian Jessup will be here to break down what it means ahead of the Chancellor's autumn budget. And more than 26,000 migrants, that's 26,000 migrants, have arrived by small boat so far this year. That's in just over 8 months. Research Director at the Centre for Migration Control, Rob Bates, will join us in the studio to bring us the latest. We want another action-packed show to come. Don't go anywhere. But before all that, with me now to review the Sunday front pages is the Spectator's assistant editor and parliamentary sketch writer, Madeline Grant. Madeline, welcome to the show. Great to see you.
It's great to be here.
Like my tie? You like
I
my tie?
love your tie.
It's a bit too bold for Sunday.
Well,
it's August.
I would have liked a separate colour so it wasn't matching too much with the jacket, but I think the general concept is fantastic.
Good. Now, listen, big news today on the front page of the Mail on Sunday. We've got Robert Jenrick, haven't we, talking about the fears for his daughters over boat migrants. What do you make of that?
Well, it's a very punchy op-ed indeed, and he starts listing some of the appalling sexual crimes that have been recorded allegedly by Channel migrants just in the last few weeks. And he makes the point that, you know, it affects him very much as a father of 3 girls, and he worries that might have been his daughter. Now, I think that although many people's reaction will be, well, you know, it was your party that was in charge when these numbers really began to spiral and you didn't have a great deal of success in clamping down on it. But also the complaint that I hear an awful lot is simply that politicians are never actually the people who are potentially affected by the impact of the policies that they're calling for. They're not having to live next door to a migrant hotel or an HMO. Generally, they live in perhaps slightly nicer areas of the country, or, you know, they're shielded from the effects of their very real policies. So I think this will actually be quite a powerful point.
And he's presenting a choice there, because politics is about choosing, making choices. He's saying there, I care more for my daughter's safety than the rights of foreign criminals, isn't he? And he's saying that to the government. Who are you looking after? Is it our kids or the rights of foreign criminals?
And I do think, actually, that things are starting to change. The latest round of protests have notably included an awful lot of concerned mothers in many cases, you know, professional people that live nearby. It's just not possible for the powers that be to try to paint all of these protesters, as they might have done in the past, as sort of far-right agitators or people who've been brainwashed by misinformation. Often it is concerned parents who, you know, very sensibly look at what has been happening and the age profiles of some of the children targeted for attack.
And just on the politics of the Tory party, because you work for The Spectator and formerly with me at The Telegraph, of course, you've got Robert Jenrick on page 1 of the Mail on Sunday. You've got Kevin Baynott writing about a letter or a concern about stealth taxes.
Yes.
Who's getting the most coverage? Robert Jenrick.
Well, who are we talking about now? Well, this is the thing. It's a bit of a dilemma because although Robert Jenrick, I think, has raised the salience of the Conservative Party at a time when, frankly, a lot of the public are quite fed up with hearing from, you know, the people who served in the government that they so, you know,
14 years of doing
rejected last year. But equally, he is getting headlines. And, you know, so on the one hand, people are at least talking about the Tory party and coming across as if they are more credible on this particular issue. But, of course, we're not talking about Kemi Badenoch.
No.
So this is it's a bit of a dilemma for her, I would say.
But we'll come on to the government's plans for foreign crooks later in the programme. But in response to the Mail Sunday, the Home Office have told us this. They are working to improve the recording of the detailed data held on foreign national offenders, and an upgrade to the management information system is currently underway. These improvements, they say, require significant changes to the data collection and infrastructure which underpins this management information. Once the changes are being completed, they say, our ability to provide accurate extracts and more detailed information will be significantly improved. So there we have it. Elsewhere, though, in The Sun on page 8, there's talk, isn't there, about this issue of hotels. You mentioned there HMOs, houses of multiple occupation, but also these hotels and these demonstrations are, it seems, getting more and more widespread.
Yes, absolutely. The Sun highlights the fact that in the vicinity of just one migrant hotel in South London, near Heathrow, there have been an alleged 12 crimes committed by asylum seekers in the vicinity of that hotel since February.
Yes, and we can't go into the detail on those crimes, but there's a general feeling that it's being pushed by Nigel Farage that there are crimes being committed by migrants, and we're not told if they're migrants when they're being committed. There's a recent case, wasn't there, when the police had guidelines say you don't need to say if this person is a migrant.
And in fact, the leader of the new young leader of Warwickshire Council for Reform basically used his risk contempt of court to come out and say that he had heard that the perpetrators of a particular crime in Warwickshire were migrants as well.
Yes.
So, I mean, I think it is difficult for them to try to contain information as they might have in the past. And I think now people are obviously very suspicious because they feel that they've been lied to in the past. So they will be extremely alert to the signs of anything being hushed up. You know, and there is also a kind of a new genre of, sort of citizen journalism emerging where people will sometimes, for example, you'll have these YouTubers who will just break into a migrant hotel and live stream the entire thing. You know, there is just the usual rules. I just don't think they can conduct the kind of information campaign that they might have done even a few years ago.
Because it's kept secret, because people feel, what's happening here? Why can't my parents book into that hotel? Oh, it's been taken over to house asylum seekers. But why is that? And we're not told it's happening. And I do think the secrecy inflames the situation.
I think you're right. I mean, my family live in Warwickshire. There was a hotel that opened in Warwick. It opened almost overnight. I think they gave less than 24 hours notice to the nearby residents, and it was right opposite a school. There was no communication from the council to local residents about that. People were understandably concerned and angry. I assume that they haven't bothered to tell people far in advance because they fear that there'll be a huge preemptive backlash such that the hotel will never be able to be used.
Yeah.
But obviously, the secrecy way is going to annoy people just as much, and also add to this feeling that what else are they lying to us
What would you
about?
do if you were in power? If I could vote for Maddie Grant, would you say where these signposts where the hotels are, risk? But at least then you consult people.
Yeah.
But then you risk having the demonstrations before they move in.
Well, I'm glad I'm not in charge because
not
it's
easy.
a horrible time to be running the country. So, you know, it's very easy to criticise. I feel quite sorry for our leaders. But frankly, until they change the fundamental laws that have led to this state of affairs, we are kind of where we are and we are stuck with it.
And that could mean ECH arbitral, the big issues yet to be addressed by the government. Now, Kate Forbes, she is meant to be the person who could succeed John Swinney as the SNP leader, but no longer. Yes.
So she's announced that she is leaving politics. And it's a very honest interview that she's given with the Sunday Times in which she talks about her rationale for doing that. And it seems like, you know, genuinely the demands of even being a backbencher MSP were simply too great because she said that she says in this interview that she was having to basically look after her young daughter, and she also has 2 stepchildren, I think, with her husband. So they're 3 kids that they're looking after, I think. And, you know, that actually without the ministerial help that you get, the ministerial cars, it's sort of in some ways even more difficult being a backbencher.
A 4-hour round trip to her seat, and I think only 3 hours of creche every day in the Scottish Parliament. That's no use if you've got a young child.
No, it's not. And she also spoke of a trip that she had made to India where she saw, serious crippling poverty, and it made her feel, in a way, lucky for what she had with her family, and made her think about wanting to spend more time with and during those very precious early years.
And she values being a mum and motherhood, which is also interesting, quite open about that. It's a conflict, I think, for women of all ages, really, isn't it?
But it's bad news for the SNP because they've, Kate Forbes is, agree or disagree with her, a highly capable, intelligent politician and achieved a great deal at such a young age. She's still, I think, in her mid-30s, she was doing things like when I think she had to suddenly deliver the budget at very short notice, with only a few hours' notice, age sort of 30 or something.
She went to Oxbridge and she's good at gets business.
Exactly.
She was seen as someone, a kind of sensible person.
Exactly. And the SNP does need to be seen as credible, because if you're pushing quite a radical proposition like Scottish independence, you need people to believe that the people who would then be in charge are capable of running a country. And I'm not sure that's true of all SNP
And Nicola Sturgeon, of course, in the weekend, also elsewhere in the papers yesterday, talking about how she had a miscarriage and didn't have children and her sadness over that. So there's always that conflict in politics.
Always.
I'm afraid women face a lot.
Yes, you're right.
Elsewhere, though, there's Kate Maltby. Now, we know her, don't we, as a writer, but she's writing about an issue that many face on a different topic, a lighter topic, on buses and things.
Well, I think this was actually a fantastic assignment they gave her. Basically, The Observer have asked Kate Maltby, a journalist, to basically approach people in public that she sees blasting out their music without headphones, which is, frankly, something I'm sure a lot of us have wished that we had the stones to go and do ourselves. But usually we just sit there fuming in silence until the end of the journey. But Kate Maltby has actually been confronting them about why they do what they do, and the answers are quite interesting. There's one guy who basically swears at her, uses the bad 4-letter word beginning with C at her, so there's that. But there's also a guy who says that it's like everyone else is doing it, so I'm doing it to distract myself from them. So there's such a cacophony on public transport now that you actually have to, almost as a form of self-defence, blast out your music just to drown out all the other people. I think that's an excuse. I mean, there's no excuse for blasting out music.
Put your headphones on and get on with it. And just very finally, there's the news this weekend about whether Freddie Mercury had a secret love child. His former girlfriend, Mary Austin, who knew him intimately and very, very well, says it's news to her.
Well, that is I would say that is pretty emphatic, especially since I think that there have been stories now written about this alleged love child in which they quote the person in question, who says that Mary Austin would have known the whole thing. So the fact that Mary Austin herself is now coming out and disavowing it really does seem to put a dampener on that whole theory.
The book's out next month. This will run and run through the autumn.
It could all just be solved with a simple DNA test, surely.
Yes, well, we're told that that's not... Well, let's leave that one for now, but it could be. Madeline Grant, great to see you again in the studio at GB News. Thank you for coming on. You've been fantastic, as ever. Now, coming up, Labour MP for Kettering, Rosie Wrighting, joins me to discuss the latest initiative in the government's plan for change, with news today that criminals will now face immediate deportation after sentencing for the first time. This is the Camilla Tominey Show on GB News with me, Christopher Hope. Stay tuned.
I hope we haven't forgotten anything.
Travel insurance, I tick that box.
Yeah, but remember what you forgot last year.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello. The European heatwave will continue over the next few days, so some very high temperatures for many places. Lots of blue skies and sunshine, though, including the Canary Islands and Madeira, but the heat is most intense across Iberia, so Portugal and inland parts of Spain seeing temperatures into the low to mid-40s Celsius. Hot also across Italy, the Balkans, Greece and Turkey. And it's going to stay hot over the next few days as well. Lots and lots of sunshine, temperatures in the high 30s or low 40s.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Camilla Tominey Show with me, Christopher Hope. Now, joining me here in GB News' Westminster studio is Rosie Wrighting MP, the Labour MP for Kettering. Rosie Wrighting, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Government plans today to allow your government, our government, to deport foreign national prisoners. How many will be deported in the first year?
This is about Labour taking action on deporting foreign criminals. Already, we've seen an uplift. So in the past year, we've deported 5,400. That's 14% more than that same time in the previous year. But what this means is that we can go firmer and faster and deport these foreign criminals straight after they've been sentenced. We can't put an exact number. I know people...
So all I want to hear is how many, Rosie?
Well, over the past few years, people have heard so many numbers from the previous Conservative government that haven't ended up happening. I think they've stopped believing numbers, but what they want to see is action. And this change in law is how they're going to get that action and see foreign criminals deported to free up prison space and save taxpayers' money.
10,400 foreign national prisoners in jails. That's 12% of the population. They cost £54,000 each. That's millions of pounds of our taxpayers' money being spent on housing these people here. Will they all be sent home, and when will that happen by?
Well, it's a process needs to be played out. Obviously, this has just been announced today, but what is really important is that they will have the chance, they will be deported straight after being sentenced. We inherited a system where they would have to serve 50% of their sentence. In June, we changed that to 30%, and now this is straight after sentencing, which really increases the numbers of people we can deport. But the Tories, I mean, they had these prison transfer agreements, but really the numbers were nothing like what they sort of played out they would be in the media. I think in their last year they deported 33, which is
not the numbers that people want to see. But this change in law is how we get that action.
And this is a big issue under the last Labour government in the noughties under Labour. It's never gone away, the issue of foreign national prisoners. One concern might be that when they do go home to wherever they've come from, they then can be free to wander around and be free at liberty to just be free in their home country rather than jailed. What do you say to victims seeing that?
I think that victims should always have justice for the crime that has taken place. And I don't know the details of the communication with the country they'll be returning to, but if someone has been sentenced because they've committed a crime, it is right, absolutely right, that they serve that sentence. And if they're a foreign national, that they're not taking up our taxpayers' money and vital space in our prisons.
They could be freed and go home, be free to wander around at home. And how is that justice for victims?
Well, you know, other countries have their own judicial process, and it is right that the people who have committed a crime should be serving that sentence.
But if they're not, if they're going home to be freed at home, maybe it's better if they're here, serving their time here for crimes committed in this country.
Well, they should be serving their sentence.
But they may not be under this policy.
Well, that's down to the country that they come from, but there are strict judicial processes in other countries.
If they're sent home and not imprisoned at home, they shouldn't be sent back.
Well, they should be serving their sentence in their home country.
What about human rights, though? There could be concerns about that. There might be human rights challenges to being sent away from this country.
Yeah, and that is a challenge. But also, if you have committed a crime, it is right that you face the full force of the law, and if that's in the country that you're from, that you know that that's a possibility, that you'll be facing that. But also, I know you spoke about this has been an issue for a long time, and it has, but the amount of space in prison is a current issue, and we saw that when we were elected last year. I mean, I think personally, it's part of the reason that the Tories called the elections when they did, is because they knew how full our prisons were going to be. And it's just not right that prison spaces are taken up with people who could be serving time in their own country.
Well, talking of locking people up, is it right then that 450 people were arrested yesterday campaigning for Palestine action by 3,000 police officers? Is that an appropriate use of police time?
Palestine action is. We have to remember that Palestine, what's happened here, and they broke into an RAF base. They've been targeting businesses, often Jewish-owned businesses as well, and there's no place for that in our society. I don't believe there's a place for that. But there's clearly information that has been given to the Home Office here that isn't in the public domain, and they've been strongly advised that Palestine Action have gone from the criminal damage into
I should
terrorism.
say that the criminal damage you talk about is alleged and is subject to live criminal proceedings now. So moving away from that, why that may be part of the reason why it's prescribed, but we'll wait and see in the court case. But there are, there's people there dressed up as suffragettes with signs saying, I support Palestine Action, and they're being led away by police. I mean, is this what Labour government was elected to do?
No, this is about the actions of Palestine Action and the criminal damage. We've seen it online, that they have...
elsewhere too.
And the information that isn't in the public domain, and that the Home Office believe that this is the right decision to make, to keep our country and people safe. But what I do want to say is it is absolutely right that people feel, and I feel, deeply distressed and upset by the images coming out of Gaza and the Middle East. And this doesn't take away from people's right, as a part of our democratic system, a right to protest and to protest about what they're seeing in the Middle East. But Palestine Action have caused criminal damage, and the Home Office have had information to believe that that's gone into the terrorism.
That's right, so alleged criminal damage, and we'll see how that plays out in court. The government, though, looks like it will be recognising Palestine as a state next month, subject to conditions. You're content with that? You think that's the right choice to make?
I believe that that's the right thing to do. It was a commitment that we stood on during the election. It was in our manifesto. And now is the time to do that, and to look. It feels very far away at the moment that two-state solution. I know so many of us want to get to, but it is right for the Palestinian people that now is the time for the UK to recognise Palestine if those conditions are not met.
Despite America's concern, despite Israel's concern?
Well, I think with America, when it comes to the humanitarian crisis and getting aid into Gaza, we have the same objectives. And actually, JD Vance, I know he spoke about this with David Lammy in his visit. We might have different ways of getting to that objectives, but we do have that shared goals to see peace in the region and a two-state solution.
Big concern for GB News viewers and listeners is migrant hotels. Do you have many in Kettering?
No, under the previous government there was 2, I believe, but now there isn't. And I know I speak to residents, and I wasn't an MP, but I was living in the area myself at the time. That the migrant hotels cause distress for the communities, but also for the refugees themselves.
You understand concerns about it?
Yeah, of course.
From people? Yeah.
Yes, I understand the concerns about the hotels, not only because they cost the taxpayer a massive amount of money. There is no chance for integration. It's difficult for the communities as well. I understand from the refugee side, from the residents themselves, that there's concern, of course.
Yeah. Big issues this autumn, looking into the possible tax-raising budget. We'll wait and see how the government deals with the issues with their finances. In the Sunday Times, talks about Rachel Reeves looking for more of a Labour narrative this autumn. What do you want to see from this government on tax and spend?
I think from the beginning we've seen a government that's deep-rooted in the budgets that are deep-rooted in Labour values. That's why we made the decisions we made in the budget last year, so that, you know, the bigger businesses would hold the biggest burden.
But more tax rises, is that what we want?
Well, like I said previously, we have to put finances back to a sustainable footing. But I believe that Rachel Reeves makes decisions deep-rooted in Labour values. But I'm not in the Treasury, so I don't know. I can't say what those decisions are going to be. I will be watching the budget like everyone else. Yeah, I know that they'll be deep-rooted in Labour
Rosie
values.
Wrighting, MP for Kettering, thanks for joining us today live in the studio. We really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Now, coming up next, the Tory chairman of the powerful Public Accounts Committee, Sir Clifton-Brown, will join me. This is the Camilla Tominey Show with me, Christopher Hope, and we're only, of course, on GB News.
There's just 3 weeks to see how you can win your mortgage or rent paid for a whole year. That's a cash lump sum equivalent to 12 of your monthly mortgage or rent payments, right up to a whopping £20,000. Plus, we'll add an extra £5,000 on top for good measure. Make sure you don't miss out as lines close on the 29th of August. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entry start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB15 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 29th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is the small boat crossing that everyone can cheer on, going from Fulham all the way back to HMS President in the city of London. It's going very well. I've walked 10 miles this morning with some armed forces veterans, their families, campaigners. GB News is raising money for SAFA and other armed forces charities as part of that Armed Forces Day celebration. Amazing viewers and listeners have raised £2,000 already. And after that gruelling 10-miler, which I have to say was done at quite a gentle pace, are now being treated to this luxurious return back to the starting point on board an HMS, a Royal Navy vessel. This is President 01. This is a training vessel that they use for reservists and also Royal Navy sailors as they make use of the Thames. We've had some great sights already. As we've been going back, we've seen plenty of people taking part in that Safa 13 Bridges march, waving down on us. I think they're probably slightly jealous that they're still working away and we're enjoying the hospitality of the Royal Navy. But over 1,200 people taking part today, Dawn. Over 150 of them military reservists like myself and Will Mayrick, the producer for today's programme, doing excellent work. He's an RAF officer, in fact, I have to call him sir, which can get very embarrassing. But we're doing great work today, I think, really showcasing the armed forces. It's been amazing to speak to so many veterans, their families, and also many serving personnel on this march today as well. And we're just coming under, there's Vauxhall Bridge there, we've got MI6 to the right, very exciting, always a beautiful sight, that iconic building. And there's going to be a lot of people still on the march as we go past, we accept. We just had some waves from the bridge earlier.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back to the Camilla Tominey Show on GB News with me, Christopher Hope. Lots more still to come. We'll hear from the Tory chairman of the Public Accounts Committee, Sir Geoffrey Clifton-Brown, as we look ahead to the party conference season. Former NATO official Nicholas Williams will also be joining us as the national security advisors from Europe, Ukraine and the US met yesterday in the UK to discuss how an end can be brought to this dreadful war. Economist Julian Jessup will provide expert insight into the state of the economy ahead of the Chancellor Rachel Reeves' autumn budget, when many fear taxes will have to go up again. And as more than 26,000 small boat migrants cross the Channel in the first 7 months of this year, Rob Bates from the Centre for Migration Control will be here to bring us the latest. But first, here's your latest news headlines with Aaron Armstrong.
Hi there, very good morning to you. Aaron Armstrong here in the GB newsroom. Almost all foreign criminals will be deported immediately when they receive a custodial sentence. Ministers say the planned changes for England and Wales will save the taxpayer an average £54,000 a year for each prison place. Now, if passed, the new legislation could be applied to those already in prison, meaning deportations could begin immediately, although murderers, terrorists and those on life sentences will have to serve the full term in the UK. The proposal by the Justice Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, goes further than a change to the law to come into force in September that will allow deportation for those who've served 30% of their sentence, rather than the current 50%. As of January 2024, there were 10,400 foreign nationals in the prison system. Now, Conservatives have accused the government of taking a soft-touch approach that isn't working, but Minister Alex Davis-Jones says Labour's clamping down on loopholes in the law.
Been very clear as a government, the Home Secretary and the Lord Chancellor, that we feel like Article 8, which is the right to a family life, is being abused currently. We need to tighten that up, and we are looking at just exactly how we do that. We are, of course, ready for any legal challenges, but we believe that this policy is robust. We are doing the right thing here by the British taxpayer, by the British citizens, and we are ensuring that we are committed to their plan for change and doing what they think is right.
Police say 474 people were arrested during yesterday's demonstration in support of Palestine Action in central London. Now, of those arrests, 466 were for supporting the group, which has been banned under anti-terror laws. Police took action when dozens of people simultaneously unveiled handwritten signs opposing genocide and supporting Palestine Action at the protest in Parliament Square. Well, the Home Office says the prescription of Palestine Action is not about Palestine, nor does it affect the freedom to protest on Palestinian rights. A separate coalition march through London yesterday led to just one arrest. Charity Amnesty International has described the mass arrest under UK terrorism laws as deeply concerning. 3,000 riot police were deployed across England and Wales yesterday amid ongoing protests outside hotels housing asylum seekers. Anti-migrant protesters scuffled with officers in Nuneaton as rival groups staged anti-migrant and anti-racism demonstrations in the town. Tensions are running high there over the alleged rape of a 12-year-old girl. Meanwhile, protests were mostly peaceful around the country, like this one in Bristol, but a number of arrests were made in Nuneaton, Canary Wharf and Epping. New figures reveal 435 small boat migrants crossed the Channel yesterday, bringing the total of arrivals to more than 26,000 this year. The White House is considering inviting Volodymyr Zelensky to a meeting between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin to discuss the war in Ukraine. The reports in the US come a day after Donald Trump announced he will be meeting the Russian president in Alaska for peace talks on Friday. It's understood Mr. Trump is willing to make it a trilateral meeting, but for now it remains just him and Mr. Putin, as requested by Russia's leader. Ukraine's European allies, meanwhile, have reiterated their support following a security meeting hosted by the US Vice President J.D. Vance and the British Foreign Secretary David Lammy. Yesterday, European leaders have said the path to peace cannot be decided without Kyiv. Mr. Trump has said a deal is close, but it would involve swapping some territories, leading to confusion, as Ukraine does not currently control any Russian land. The UN Security Council will hold an emergency session later to discuss Israel's plan to occupy Gaza City. Secretary-General Antonio Guterres says Israel's proposal to expand its military operation is a dangerous escalation. Now, the meeting, which was requested by 5 European nations, including the UK and France, has been endorsed by all members of the Security Council, except the US and the current chair of the Council, Panama. It was originally scheduled to happen last night. Firefighters in Dorset say they've brought a wildfire at Holt Heath near Wimborne under control. A crew of more than 100 fighters managed to save one property from the blaze, which started yesterday morning. A major incident was declared and 20 homes had to be evacuated. Finally, the last newspaper street vendor in Paris is to receive one of France's highest honours after selling papers on the streets of the capital for 50 years.
Breaking news. Monica Lewinsky is pregnant by Trump. She's got twins.
Well, Ali Akbar's been crisscrossing the Latin Quarter, selling dailies on the terraces of Parisian cafes for more than 50 years. Now he's to be officially recognised for his contribution to French culture. The President, Emmanuel Macron, who bought newspapers from Mr. Akbar as a student, will decorate him with the Order of Merit next month. The veteran says he sells 30 copies of Le Monde on a good day. Before the internet, it could be as much as 3 times as many. Those are your headlines. I'll be back with more just after 11 o'clock.
Tune into GB News Radio wherever you are. Online, on DAB digital radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Welcome back to the Camilla Tominey Show with me, Christopher Hope, and I'm really struck by that debate, I think, which Labour will face in coming months. It's great they want to send back foreigners in our jails here, costing over £50,000 each. There's more than 10,000 of them. Let's find a way of dealing with that problem. But what about victims? What about people who are sent back to other countries? And if they're not put into prison there, how will that feel for victims? But before we go to Sir Geoffrey Clifton-Brown, he's a senior Tory chairman, of course, of the Public Accounts Committee. Let's talk now to Michael Portillo, of course, a former Conservative cabinet minister when he was in government. Michael, a big issue, going back to your time, I think, foreign national prisoners. Do you deport them to other countries? And if so, will they be punished there as well?
Because we're dealing here, aren't we, Christopher, with different pieces of law, some of which is coming into effect and some of which is prospective. So as I understand it, the law that's already there means that prisoners potentially can be sent away after serving 30% of their sentence. It was before 50%. And then there's a prospective law for the future that would enable them to be sent away before they've even begun their sentences. I must say, I think the government is in quite a pickle there. Because the idea that someone would not serve any time at all, would potentially be sent to a country where they would be free. The government then goes on to say that they would be banned from re-entering Britain. But let's face it, how strong do we think our immigration controls are? I mean, what is to stop that person simply turning around, destroying documentation and turning up in a boat? So I think this announcement by the government, which is obviously meant to suggest that the government's being very tough, it's dealing with immigration, it's dealing with crime, all at the same time, as usual with government announcements, leads to an awful lot of questions that I think will leave people feeling quite uncomfortable.
Yes, quite. Well, I've got you, Michael. What's on your show today at 11 o'clock?
Well, we will be looking at that a little bit as well. I'm very interested in what Israel has been saying about taking political control of Gaza City. I want to ask my panel whether that's ethical. I'll be talking a little bit about rail electrification and why we lag so far behind, and also why so many authors today are self-publishing, and some of them becoming very rich.
Michael Portillo, sounds great. So Sunday with Michael Portillo is on this channel at 11 a.m. Tune in, I'll be watching too. Now, joining me is the Tory MP for North Cotswolds, Sir Geoffrey Clifton-Brown. Sir Geoffrey, thank you for joining us today on the Camilla Tominey Show. It's great to see you. Thank you, sir, for joining us.
No, great to be with you.
Politics never stops at GB News, certainly. It's a big week this week with President Zelensky and Ukraine. Should he be invited, Geoffrey Clifton-Brown, to those talks between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin on Friday?
Well, I think it's very hard to see how you could eventually come up with any peace deal if President Zelensky wasn't part of it. So, I mean, I think the ideal is certainly that he should be there. But if he isn't there on this occasion, he will certainly need to be there on subsequent occasions, I think.
And any deal, what will it look like? The Sunday Times reporting today that there must be a cast-iron guarantee for Ukraine. Will there be a territory swap? Will we have to offer, and should we offer, NATO membership to Ukraine?
Well, I think some territory swap is inevitable, given that Russia now holds quite a bit of Ukraine. Inevitably, at least on some form of informal basis, Russia is likely to want to occupy that bit that it holds. The idea of NATO membership, I would have thought, would be a complete anathema to President Putin. So I doubt that'll be part of the deal. In fact, I think totally the opposite. Whatever the peace deal is, there will be peacekeepers in what remains of Ukraine. And I suspect the deal will be that they will not be allowed to join NATO.
We're looking to a busy September. We're going to see probably Palestine recognised as a state for the first time by the UK. That's likely to happen at the UN General Assembly meeting in the third week of September. What's your take on that, Geoffrey Clifton-Brown? Do you approve?
Well, I think let's just qualify that statement, Chris, if I may, because I think whilst ourselves and France and Germany and other nations may well recognise Palestine, clearly the Americans won't. And they are one of the 5 Security Council members, and they would probably veto any formal recognition of Palestine as a state. So we'll have a situation where Palestine is recognised informally by ourselves and some other countries, but not formally by the United Nations as an independent country. So this will be quite difficult, I think.
Will it change much? Will it open access to aid maybe for Palestine or Gaza as it is currently? It will, I suppose, establish a diplomatic network for the nascent state of Palestine?
Well, I hope that is the answer, Chris. I hope it will establish a diplomatic network, and I hope it will mean that the international community will be able to get the amount of aid that's really desperately needed into that Gazan state at the moment.
Are you comfortable with Israel's plans to run Gaza? They want to rid Gaza of Hamas, don't they? And then take over the running in some way of what will be a country. Is that a good thing? Do you think it will just inflame tension?
Well, I think what Benjamin Netanyahu's intentions was to take over the whole of Palestine. Now, I wasn't quite clear whether that means driving everybody out of Palestine, but whatever, he will take over the governments. And I think that is deeply unsatisfactory, because once he's taken it over, what's to actually make him give it back again to any form of Palestine government. So I think this move should be strongly opposed. And I think the way I was a former Conservative Friends of Israel, but I think the way the Israelis have treated the population in Gaza is completely unacceptable. Starving them of aid, of medical supplies, of water, of food is completely unacceptable. And I think the international community has got to find a way of dealing with that.
Just looking ahead into our budget, we haven't got a date yet for the budget. It's probably going to be late October, very early in November. Geoffrey Clifton-Brown, are you concerned about wealth taxes? Because that's been mooted, or how will you be filling what could be seen as quite a large fiscal black hole?
Well, I think that many people in this country don't realise what a parlous economic state we're in. We're borrowing a record amount, about 100% of GDP. The interest on that alone is over £100 billion. That's sunk money each year to service that loan. And I think there will come a point where the international community will actually start to restrict the amount we can borrow. The country is not growing, the economy is not growing, and we're at a record high of taxation since the war already. Frankly, what's happening with our economy under this government at the moment is we're spending more than we can afford. But I don't see this
We've been
government...
doing that since you were there for 14 years, and we did it under your government, didn't we, Sir Geoffrey Clifton-Brown? I mean, you spent £500 billion on the COVID pandemic and the energy shock from the Ukraine war. Surely that's got to be paid for.
Well, of course it's got to be paid for, but it's got substantially worse in the last year, and there are no mechanisms, as I can see, to actually start to reverse this situation. So inevitably, taxes are going to go up considerably in the budget. But I don't think that either a wealth tax or even with capital gains tax is going to raise the amount of money that is required. So I think inevitably the Chancellor is going to have to start to raise one or two of the basic taxes that she has promised not to. So I think we are in an absolutely dire situation, and we're not actually doing anything to repair it, because what is happening at the moment is the public sector is at a record high for the size of it, and the private sector, businesses are going out of businesses all the time, unemployment is going up. So the situation is actually getting worse, not better, under this government.
I mean, the government says it wants to cut the civil service by 10% in that spring statement, and we hear today that Steve Reid has done that in DEFRA, so surely you give them that credit. They are trying to cut the size of the civil service, but it is bloated, it's too big, and we haven't yet seen if they can even cut the benefits bill by £5 billion. That was failed, wasn't it, just in the summer just gone?
So two things there, Chris. Firstly, that I don't see much signs of the civil service being cut, and I interview twice a week. My committee on a twice weekly basis interviews the most senior people in the civil service, and I don't see much signs of it being cut. No. Second thing is that I don't see any measures to actually cut the budget at the moment, cut the amount of spending, or even try and root out waste. And we on the Public Accounts Committee, could save them billions of pounds if we were asked how you would do it.
Yes. Just turning to Tory party politics, you're the treasurer of the 1922 committee of Tory MPs. How's Kemi Badenoch doing?
Well, I think we've now got a conference coming up in October, and I think that's her real chance to start to showpiece what she's really all about, put what the Conservative Party stands for, and actually publicise. And I got a list the other day. The number of policies we've already come up with is quite considerable, but actually nobody knows about it. So the party conference is a time when she can really set out her stall and show what the Conservative Party really stands for.
But you said that no one knows about it because she's been in power for basically 9 or 10 months. Isn't that a complete failure as leader of the opposition?
Well, inevitably, after the catastrophic defeat that we had in last July's general election, it was going to be a really tough job for the first year or two. So her job is to gradually not only come up with some policies, but actually start to get on the media. And she does that where she can. But of course, at the moment, other things are happening, and she just isn't getting the air coverage that she really...
The other thing's happening is Reform UK is happening. It's miles ahead in the polls. Is she got the right stuff to beat or to defeat Nigel Farage?
Well, I think she needs to be more outspoken, really bang the drum as to what we actually do stand for. And after all, we've got 120 members of Parliament. Reform have got, 4 or something? Yeah. We really ought to be able to start, with all those spokesmen coming on the radio and social media all the time, we really ought to be able to start to actually get it across to the public what we do actually stand for and what we're doing about the problems, the very, very serious problems that this country faces.
Letters of no confidence can go into her leadership from November after that first year's grace ends. Do you expect letters to be sent in expressing concern and wanting a change of leader?
Well, my job as part of the officers of the 22 is to monitor this sort of situation. I've no idea because the chairman, as you know, never reveals when he's received letters or not. And of course, he can't, as you say, until a year is up. So, I mean, that would be pure speculation. But I didn't get the impression before the parliamentary break that there was a level of dissatisfaction that would warrant letters going in. I think we've really got to wait and see. Give her a little bit more space. Give her a little bit of airtime over the party conference and see how that all shakes out.
Well, Jeffrey Clifton-Brown, an easy one finally. Will she be your leader at the next election?
Well, I think she's got a lot of what it takes. She's brave, she's bright, she's gutsy. She just needs to actually start to bang the drum a little bit more and actually show what the Conservative Party really stands for. And she's got some good people in her shadow cabinet. Get them out and about in the country a bit more and really start banging that drum and start having some policies to oppose what this government is getting wrong in the economy, on immigration, on health. I mean, there's a lot of things going wrong in this country, sadly, at the moment.
Yeah. You're not saying yes or no, are you, to that question? Will she be your leader?
I've no idea, Chris. I think it depends on how she performs over the next few months. Every month that goes on, she should be getting better. We'll see after the party conference. Have me on after the party conference, and then we'll see.
So, Jeffrey Clifton-Brown, it's an open invitation for you on this show. And, of course, you're not a front bencher. You're doing it on your Sunday. Thank you for joining us today on GB News. It's great to see you. Next up, we've got the NATO official, Nicholas Williams. He's joining me here in the studio at GB News to respond to a potential peace deal, let's hope, between Ukraine and Russia, as national security advisors from Europe and the US met yesterday in the UK to discuss how an end to that dreadful war can be brought. This is the Camilla Tominey Show, not with her, but with me, Christopher Hope. Stay tuned.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world. Am I allowed to talk then? No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Britain's Newsroom with Andrew and Beth.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie's here. I'm Michelle Jubilee. Britain's News Channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device. And as long as you have an internet connection. Tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've read the headlines, you've heard what those in power have to say. How about now we actually get to the truth?
They would pay attention.
We go beyond the political theatre and tell you what's really going on behind the scenes. For a massive council tax hike, one of the biggest in the UK. Others follow their lines, but we go off script.
You sound like a broken record, you say that week after week.
Cutting through the narratives and giving you unique perspectives. That's Ben Leo tonight, Saturdays and Sundays from 9 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Jubilee, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
because the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good Afternoon Britain isn't just about us. The wonderful thing about this programme is it's about everyone watching. It's an interactive programme.
Well, there absolutely is something to see here, and we're going to be talking about it more. Whether it's breaking royal news, please bring us up to date, or indeed a particularly punchy speech in the House of Commons.
Very, very curious.
We bring it to you live, and then we bring you live reaction as well.
That's Good Afternoon Britain, weekdays from midday.
Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Camilla Tominey Show. Joining me now in the studio here is a former senior NATO official, senior member of the European Leadership Network, Nicholas Williams. Nicholas Williams, thank you for joining us. A very big week in international politics. The first time that Vladimir Putin has set foot in America on a US soil by visiting Donald Trump on Friday in Alaska. What can we hope from it?
Well, it's a big event, obviously. It's doubtful whether it will live up to expectations, but the key point is that there is a dialogue between the United States and Putin, and seems to be excluding Ukraine and the Europeans.
Yeah, so wait and see how that plays out. I think there are calls today from Europe to allow Ukraine into these talks because, of course, it is part of the conversation, and it's concerning that it's not there. Do you fear, though, that this is rewarding Putin by giving that access to Donald Trump on US soil? He should be a pariah. He's now being welcomed, isn't he, into America by Donald Trump?
Yes, and that's the European perspective, but from Trump's perspective, it's all about doing a deal, making peace insofar as he can make peace, and he thinks there's some movement on the Russian side, and I think it's a clever ploy by Putin. And don't.
What's clever, to go to Alaska for it, or to be in Reykjavik or somewhere else?
To go to Alaska, yes, that's probably Trump's suggestion. But to suggest that the Ukrainians withdraw from the Donbass, which is a key issue which the Europeans and the Ukrainians resisted at all costs.
That brings us on to the shape of any deal here. Surely it's going to be a territory swap, but can you have like-for-like in territory? As you say, they're the Donbass, but other areas which Ukraine want Russia to also withdraw from?
Well, as I said, there are great expectations, but they won't be fulfilled. And I suspect that this is a process, not an event. And the process will be, okay, Ukraine is excluded, but the Americans and the Russians will come up with a proposal for a ceasefire, which involves withdrawal from Donbass by Ukraine. And then there'll be a second phase, which will be fill in the details. But the trap for Ukrainians and the Europeans is, of course, that they cannot accept this proposal for the ceasefire, and then Trump is faced with the choice to walk away or to double down in support of either Russia or Ukraine.
Are the talks surprising? Because I've been with Donald Trump a fair bit in February and also most recently in Turnberry, and he always talks about the fact, or most recently talks about the fact, that he talked to Vladimir Putin about peace, and then straight after those talks have happened, Putin's raining down missiles on Kyiv. I mean, he feels he's not playing fair there.
Well, Putin has always been adamant in his objectives. He's been adamant that the conditions for a ceasefire don't exist.
Yeah.
But now, what persuaded Witkoff and Trump is that they say that the conditions for a ceasefire do exist, provided that the Ukrainians withdraw from Donbass.
Yes, well, let's see how that plays out. On the front page today, Sunday Times, there's talk here of the UK saying that Kyiv must be given ironclad guarantees, including potential NATO membership. You've been involved in and around NATO for 3 or 4 decades now. Is that likely?
It's not likely in terms of NATO guarantees. This is one of Putin's red lines, and this process is a process of Americans gradually conceding Putin's red lines. But security guarantees from a consortium of European powers may be possible. But again, it's Putin, in Trump terms, who holds all the cards.
Who's winning?
Well, on the ground, it's the Russians who are winning, and that's why the pressure is on the Europeans and Zelensky, and not on Putin.
And longer term, there's talk since the Lancaster House deal back in January. There was talk then of European troops on the ground, a coalition of the willing. That's all died away now. Why is that?
Well, I think the proposals and the ideas are dormant. As I say, this is a process, and possibly the next phase of talks, if there is a next phase, will deal with the details. And the Europeans will resurrect their ideas in that stage. But I fear that Putin has maneuvered Trump into a position and the Europeans into a position that the Ukrainians will refuse that peace deal.
And just finally, Nicholas Williams, on Gaza, Palestine will probably be recognised by France and the UK next month at the UN General Assembly meeting. What will America do? I mean, is it even... They'll veto anything, won't they, at the Security Council, so it won't have any actual legal force internationally in the UN.
It doesn't have any legal force. As the instigator of the Balfour Declaration in 1917, it has a profound symbolic force.
And that's about it. Well, Nicholas Williams, thank you for joining us. Of course, you're Senior Fellow at the European Leadership Network and a former NATO chief, been in and around NATO for 4 decades. Thanks for coming into the channel today. Thank you for coming in, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, coming up next, the economist Julian Jessup. He'll be breaking down the state of the economy ahead of the Chancellor's potentially tax-raising autumn budget. This is, of course, Camilla Tominey Show. Not with her, but with me, Christopher Hope. Stay tuned to GB News.
Good morning and welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. Temperatures are due to rise over the next few days and it will be turning hot, particularly in the south, by Monday and Tuesday. But even today, it will be a warmer day than yesterday, and that's partly due to lighter winds. Those winds will still be blowing in a few showers across the very far north of Scotland through the next few hours and perhaps even to the early part of the afternoon. But the vast majority of the UK will have a dry day, plenty of sunshine, and that sunshine really lifting the temperatures quite quickly. So by this afternoon, widely temperatures in the mid-20s across England and Wales, perhaps as high as 28 degrees Celsius in the Greater London region, and even the low 20s across parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. Temperatures will remain in the low 20s as we go into this evening, with unbroken sunshine from many parts of southern England through this evening. Light winds as well, so feeling pleasantly warm right the way through this evening, but we will run into a bit more in the way of cloud across Northern Ireland and in particular western Scotland. Here there'll be some showery outbreaks of rain developing later this afternoon and more especially this evening, and that rain will turn increasingly persistent across the Western Highlands as we go towards this evening. So a pretty damp night is in store for Northern Ireland and parts of Scotland, and maybe some rain fringing into the north of England at times, particularly Cumbria and Northumberland. Otherwise, further south, clear skies for many southern and central parts of England and Wales. And here, well, there may always be a little bit of patchy mist in the countryside once again, but I think temperatures will be higher than they were last night, so generally a milder night to come and temperatures holding up in the teens Celsius for many of us. So a north-south split in the weather on Monday. You can see a lot of cloud across many parts of Scotland, Northern Ireland and Northern England. Some showery outbreaks of rain off and on. And that rain will be fairly persistent for much of the day across the Western Highlands and the northwest of Scotland. Otherwise, though, England and Wales seeing plenty of sunshine, a bit of high-level cloud in the sky at times, and 1 or 2 late afternoon thunderstorms across the southwest, but turning hot inland with temperatures into the low 30s.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m.
Only on GB News.
Welcome back to the Camilla Tominey Show with me, Christopher Hope. Now, joining me to discuss taxation, tax and spend, and how on earth we fill these fiscal black holes which keep cropping up is Julian Jessup, the economist. Julian, welcome to the Camilla Tominey Show. What will the Chancellor do in the budget? We're expecting that, of course, in October or November.
Well, I think every economist would agree that there is another black hole in the public finances that needs to be filled. So last week, the National Institute of Economic and Social Research suggested that might be as much as 50 billion. I think that's probably an overestimate. They were making some very pessimistic assumptions about growth in particular. But I think we're probably looking at another at least 20 billion of tax increases. As far as possible, she'll try and raise that from taxes on capital and also from sin taxes. So that's increases in taxes on things like gambling in particular and possibly road fuel duty as well. But I don't think this is going to work. The basic problem in the UK economy is a lack of confidence amongst businesses, consumers, and investors. You know, why would you bother to spend or hire or invest in this country if you're worried about taxes going up even further? So I think the focus is wrong, but what she'll try and do is to close that gap by raising taxes even further.
In today's Sunday Times, there's a big piece about Labour's how it can ever escape what they call the doom loop. Apparently, those who are close to Rachel Reeves are saying she'll create a more Labour narrative for measures in the autumn budget this year. Is that more taxes?
Well, I think by Labour narrative, she means maybe shifting the emphasis a bit from just headline economic growth, which nobody really understands anyway, towards raising living standards.
Okay.
The sort of thing that she'll be talking about there is the increases in, for example, the national minimum wage, which has been quite good for some people on low incomes. But the problem with that, of course, is that higher national minimum wage is ultimately paid for by companies. So that's contributed to higher business costs, which is one of the reasons why inflation is likely to rise from 3.6% now to maybe 4% in the autumn.
Yeah.
So what we're heading for is this nasty, toxic combination of what's sometimes called stagflation. So that stagnant economic growth, rising inflation, and also increasing job losses. Now, I don't think I'll be any near as bad as the stagflation we saw in the 1970s. But crucially, this isn't going to be good for the public finances. So unless the government really addresses the growth and productivity problems in the economy, as you say, we're just in a doom loop and things are just going to get worse.
And that means getting more people off benefits and into work. You mentioned earlier taxes on capital. That means wealth taxes, doesn't it? Now, we heard from Jonathan Reynolds. He's told GB News earlier this month how he thought it'd be crazy to bring in wealth taxes. Do you think that those are still alive, or have they been put down now?
Well, I think that the government has clearly ruled out what you might call a one-off or permanent 1 or 2% tax on wealth. I think the reason they've done that is a very good one, is that we know those don't work. So, pretty much every other country that's raised wealth taxes over the last decade or so has regretted it. They simply, damage confidence in the economy. They drive people overseas, or they mean that people who have choices decide not to work or not to invest or not to set up a business. So that form of wealth tax, I think, has been ruled out. But there are lots of other things that the government could do in order to raise more money from capital. And I think some of that might be sensible. I think most economists would agree that taxation of income should be the same, whether that income is from labour or from capital. But because the government is scrambling around to find an extra billion here or extra billion there, I'm pretty confident it won't do so in the most sensible way. It will end up damaging incentives, undermining investment, and ultimately weakening growth.
How much is the issue we have now Labour's fault? I just only say to you that the last government spent £500 billion on the COVID pandemic and also dealing with the energy shock from the Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Wasn't it always the case that we'd have to put up taxes to pay for that? Or is this Labour's fault? Or do you blame the current government?
No, I partly blame the current government, but also previous ones, because the Labour did inherit an economy that, frankly, was in a mess. So lots of structural problems, very high borrowing and debt was just one of them. But this government, if anything, has actually made things worse. If you look at the choices they've made on fiscal policy, rather than controlling spending, they've actually increased it further. So the miserable failures to control welfare spending in particular, but also pumping billions more into an NHS without reforming it, without doing a lot about productivity there. So the government has made it worse in some areas. There is a vital and urgent need for reform of the economy in all sorts of ways to boost productivity. But the things the government doing here either have stalled, so planning, for example, or they're heading in the wrong direction. So I think the employment rights bill is going to be a disaster, just saddling more costs on employers and make it even less attractive to hire people. So even if more people are looking for work, the chances are they won't be able to find it. So yes, the government did inherit a mess, but it's done very little to make it better.
It's trying to get the changes through the Lords. The planning bill is in the Lords at the moment. If it can get through that, then that might unleash more house building. The big political threat, both to Labour and the Tories, of course, is Nigel Farage. Have you looked at his plans yet? Some are saying that it's trustonomics on steroids.
I have obviously looked at reforms policies. I think they've got a few interesting ideas. I think there's a lot to be said for raising the threshold at which people start paying income tax. I think that's a good reform. I also like a more technical proposal they've got, which is to reduce the amount of interest that the Bank of England pays to commercial banks on the reserves created to finance quantitative easing. Now, that might sound a bit technical, but that could actually save the government maybe tens of billions of pounds a year, reduce the need for tax increases. But overall, I think reforms policies are basically just whatever they think will win votes or will appeal to particular donors. I don't think they have got a coherent strategy. And some parts of it, I think, will simply involve spending a lot more money for no obvious benefit.
There's been a bit of a debate about Liz Truss's role, and I say trustonomics because that's a shorthand for saying, electric shock treatment for the economy that didn't go down so well because of other issues in the market at the same time, according to Liz Truss's version of events. Do you think we're starting to reappraise her, and maybe she was onto something? It was that unfair?
Well, no, I always thought she was onto something. I was one of the people giving her advice before she became Prime Minister, and there's a lot of the things that she was planning to do I approve of. She did make some big mistakes, though, in particular announcing larger than expected tax cuts without any accompanying forecast from the independent fiscal watchdog or any immediate plans to cut spending. But I think history has been hard on her. I think she was unlucky, in particular, because of two things, as you say, that were happening in the markets. One is there was a ticking time bomb in the pensions industry that the Bank of England should have been on top of. And the other was that the Bank of England was just launching the reversal of quantitative easing. So it's starting to sell government bonds into the market, which is adding to the upward pressure on interest rates. So yes, Liz Truss made some mistakes, but it's worth remembering that her growth budget, as it was called, was initially well received, including by businesses. It was perceived as positive for growth, rather than what the new Chancellor has done, Rachel Reeves. Well, I think most people agree that she's actually holding growth back for one reason or another.
I suppose that the concern then, Julian Jessup, as a former advisor to Liz Truss, is that we shouldn't allow us to ignore any of the things she did. She was trying to do the best by this country by growing it, but it was probably too much too quickly.
I think that's exactly right. And I think dismissing everything she was trying to do because she made some big mistakes in some areas is definitely the wrong way to look at it.
Yeah. Well, Julian Jessup, thank you for joining us today on the Camilla Tominey Show on GB News. We really appreciate it. Now, still to come, the Research Director of the Centre for Migration Control, Rob Bates. He'll be joining us here in the studio to discuss the government's one-in, one-out policy to try and deal with that issue of small boat arrivals. Don't forget, 26,000 so far this year. That's a big number. This is the Camilla Tominey Show with me, Christopher Hope. We're only, of course, on GB News.
I forecast a perfect holiday in the sun.
Weather looking good then?
For sure, and no worries about our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations forecast.
Hello. The European heatwave will continue over the next few days, so some very high temperatures for many places. Lots of blue skies and sunshine, though. including the Canary Islands and Madeira, but the heat is most intense across Iberia, so Portugal and inland parts of Spain seeing temperatures into the low to mid-40s Celsius. Hot also across Italy, the Balkans, Greece and Turkey. And it's going to stay hot over the next few days as well. Lots and lots of sunshine, temperatures in the high 30s or low 40s.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Now, the National Memorial to Queen Elizabeth II will include a new bridge in St James's Park, designed by Norman Foster.
Yes, the translucent bridge will be inspired by the tiara the Queen wore on her wedding day.
But let's get more now from St James's Park with our royal correspondent, Cameron Walker. Cameron, what's the memorial going to be like?
Good afternoon, Tom and Emily. Yes, the wait is finally over. We have the final design from the renowned architect Lord Foster, who famously once criticised the King for his views on architecture. But of course, today it's all about honouring Queen Elizabeth II and her legacy. On that theme, at Marlborough Gate, which is the big gate you see behind me, which overlooks the Mall, that's going to be renamed Queen Elizabeth II Place. And there is, according to the artist impression, going to be a big statue of Queen Elizabeth II riding a horse overlooking the Mall. Of course, incredibly poignant because she had a deep love of all things equine. Incredibly poignant, of course, as well, significant love between Prince Philip and the late Queen. It's going to apparently, according to the architect, or hinted by the architect, light up at night as well, which is meant to symbolise all the diamonds that were part of that tiara. And the Queen famously also gave it to her granddaughter, loaned it to her granddaughter, Princess Beatrice, for her wedding in 2020. And then we come to the final part of St James's Park's Queen Elizabeth II's memorial, and that is going to be right here at the other end of the park, overlooking Birdcage Walk, going to be renamed Prince Philip Gates, because a new statue of Queen Elizabeth II and Prince Philip is going to be erected at the other side of St James's Park. It's meant to be them, according to the artist's impressions, in their younger years.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
We're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the Camilla Tominey Show with, of course, me, Christopher Hope. Now, joining me in the studio here is Research Director for the Centre for Migration Control, Rob Bates. Rob, welcome to studio, of course. 26,000 people arriving here illegally by small boat. What's your forecast for this calendar year?
I think we're now at the point that this is far exceeding even the worst years that we saw in 22 and 23. We're about 40% up when it comes to channel crossings on last year. We are probably going to see 50,000 people come across the English Channel.
Wow,
this
50,000 people arriving this calendar year.
I mean, this isn't just my projections. These are kind of actual statisticians and modellers that have put this forecast in. And when you look at the number of good days for crossing and you look at the fact that actually when there's a growing illegal migrant population in the country, that has a compounding effect of more people looking to make that crossing as well. So 50,000 probably feels about where we will actually end up. And then you look at what the government are actually trying to introduce in terms of a scheme with France, one in, one out, that probably by the end of this year will, in the best case scenario, see 800 people returned to France. You realise that actually their plan would see 2% of those that are probably going to come across this year removed, and you realise just the scale of this problem and the meagre offerings that the Labour government are putting forward to try and address it.
One in, one out policy. I was there at the summit when it was announced in Northwood by the Prime Minister and the French President Emmanuel Macron. That, of course, is a trial. It could be expanded. I mean, it could be more than 700, but it's a very small number at the moment, and it is time limited. It runs out in June next year, but again, it could be expanded. So we're at the very early stages of what could be a successful policy.
Well, it could be successful in that the hope is that it would eventually stop the small boats, but we need to ask ourselves whether actually having a scheme where we end up with the same number of asylum seekers, they're just at different stages of being processed through the system, is something that the British public would actually tolerate at this point. We've seen an asylum system that has exploded in terms of the cost, in terms of the social unease it's created as a result. Since 2019, the budget has gone up nearly tenfold. So we need to realise that actually the British public are more concerned about the cost of this. And if we're bringing in individuals who've had their asylum claims processed and accepted, these are then individuals who are now our responsibility to look after, and when needed to provide welfare and housing and things like that, without any spectre of them being removed from the country. So this actually could cause us to incur longer-term costs that are perhaps hidden in the welfare bill and hidden beyond sort of the headline asylum budget exploding. But there is a very real risk that this could actually end up harming us economically more so than the current chaos that we've got.
Is one in, one out enough? We haven't got a deterrent yet, have we? There's talk about offshore processing in the Balkans was one idea talked about by Keir Starmer in Albania. That hasn't happened yet. We remember back, don't we, to a year ago, or just over a year ago now, the Rwanda plan, Tory plans to deport people to Rwanda. That seemed to be working anecdotally. There's reporting from newspapers in northern France saying that people weren't going to come across until Labour won power. In the island of Ireland, some people were going from North to Southern Ireland to avoid being sent to Rwanda. Was it a mistake to drop that on day 2 of this government?
So the virtue of the Rwanda scheme was that it recognised a fundamental part of how migration flows work, which is if you want individuals to not come into your country, you need to remove those pull factors. And the Rwanda scheme did identify that a strong deterrent is necessary if you want to deter people from actually coming to your country. Unfortunately, of course, as we all know very well versed at this point, they didn't take that final step and actually create the legal framework that would enable those deportations to happen on a grand enough scale to really send a message to the tens of thousands.
It was hobbled really by the ECHR, wasn't it?
Well, of course, and there was that moment when migrants were about to be put onto the plane, and there was the late night ECHR ruling, and you then see ministers having been twisted up by from that point on, and it was ultimately really the Tories' refusal to accept that ECHR membership was the problem that hobbled their plans. And the problem is, of course, from that, Labour have looked to go so far the other way and to talk about smashing the gangs rather than stopping the boats that we're now not even having a strong conversation about a deterrent. And we've ended up with a situation where we have up to 100,000 people now in HMOs and hotels across the country. This is clearly something that's getting out of hand, and there doesn't seem to be anything solid, strong around which a proper framework of deterrence can be built with this Labour Party.
We're seeing protests, of course, across the country outside migrant hotels. Increasingly, people are starting to say that these people arriving here, often it's young men, are committing crimes. Is that overblown? I mean, or is it right that we are talking about that? The police, of course, don't tell us, do they, according to guidance, about the nationality or the immigration status of criminals?
No, I think it's very, very warranted concerns, and you see cases being reported in the Sun and certain hotels in like Bournemouth where there are a large number of charges being brought against individuals being housed in those hotels. Of course, we also know that those individuals coming across on the boats are more likely to be coming from places such as Afghanistan and Eritrea, where the indicative data, Ministry of Justice data, does suggest that they are vastly disproportionately represented in convictions for sexual assault violence.
But you say they're Eritrea and Afghanistan. They are places which may be allowed to grant asylum to those areas.
Well, and this is part of the problem, whether we need to realise that actually the asylum system and where it is at is actually too embracing of individuals from certain countries that might not be coming with our set of values, and are actually probably, if they're coming from a war zone, are more likely to be disposed for socio-economic and cultural reasons to engaging in these kind of crimes that people are rightly concerned about.
There's talk today from Robert Jenrick. He's the Shadow Justice Secretary. He's concerned about his daughters, and he's presenting a choice, I think, to government, which is quite interesting. He's saying to almost the government, who do you care more about, your children or migrants' human rights?
I think this is increasingly where the conversation is going. When you look at the statistics last year, when a quarter of sexual assaults and a quarter of rape convictions were of foreign nationals, there is a very strong need for us to have a conversation about to what extent our border policy in general is exposing us to risk. Arguably, any individual coming to this country should be not committing a single crime, and if they are doing, they should be deported. And of course, the Justice Secretary has set out some plans to go down that route and start looking to remove those that are clearly causing harm to society.
We need firmness from government to take on the vested interests which are stopping dealing with this problem. I mean, we're told the Labour government, wants to deal with it. We get to see any fruit of that.
Well, exactly, and the Labour Party's plans here, you know, they can change the law as much as they like, but whether they have the operational capacity and the operational willingness to actually get tackling, get tough, and whether that does involve having a franker conversation with Herman and telling him that perhaps he needs to wind his neck in a bit when it comes to his obsession with human rights.
Lord Herman, the Attorney General. I mean, he's blamed by his critics for this. Is it fair to blame it on one man, or is it a problem in the whole country?
Well, to be honest, I think he's probably more indicative of a kind of malaise and a kind of an ideology that does permeate quite a few ministerial
So who's running the country? Is it lawyers or politicians, perhaps?
Well, I think a lot of people would look at the rulings made by immigration tribunals and realise that actually the way they've been elevated to effectively dictate border policy, we can't remove individuals because their cousin doesn't, their nephew doesn't like a certain type of chicken.
It goes back to sovereignty, courts
and this was because that, of course, Brexit wasn't actually properly completed by the Johnson government. They refused to actually address the ECHR issue when they were doing the withdrawal agreement.
Listen, Rob Bates, thank you for joining us today, and to all my guests, of course, on Camilla Tominey Show. It's great to be here. I think Camilla's back next week. We'll watch that closely and enjoy that too. Thanks for watching at home. I hope you enjoyed it. I certainly have done. Do stay tuned. Next week, you'll see Camilla here for more straight-talking interviews and punchy debate. Up next, GB News, of course, with Michael Portillo. But first, here's the weather.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. Plenty of sunshine across much of England and Wales today. Cloudier skies, Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland as rain moves in later. But the largely dry weather is thanks to high pressure, which is across much of the UK, though this weather front slowly edging in from the west to give some cloud and rain. And you can see across Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland, a bit of a cloudier afternoon. There'll be some bright or sunny spells, a few showers possible. But across England and Wales, plenty of sunshine to come. A little cooler around the coast, but inland temperatures really starting to rise. Temperatures 25 to 28 Celsius towards the southeast. High teens to low 20s further northwest where it is a little cloudier. Into this evening time, we do see that cloud continuing to thicken across the northwest. Outbreaks of rain moving in here across the Highlands, turning breezy around the coast as well. Still some sunshine into the evening across eastern parts of Scotland, but that rain also extending into parts of Northern Ireland, northwest England clouding over too, but a lovely end to the day across much of England and Wales. Plenty of sunny spells and temperatures on the warm side. As we go through the rest of the evening and overnight, further outbreaks of rain pushing eastwards across parts of Northern Ireland, Scotland, Northern England, turning heavy at times over the higher ground, but it is patchy in nature, so some places staying dry into the early hours. The rest of England and Wales, some mist and fog patches forming once again. Temperatures not as low compared to the night just gone, double figures for everyone. So a bright start for much of England and Wales, plenty of sunny spells once the morning fog clears. Cloud and rain across parts of Northern England and Northern Ireland should clear, and it should lift and break to allow some sunny spells here, but the rain continues across northwestern parts of Scotland, particularly the Highlands where it could be heavy at times. But in that sunshine, temperatures rising to around 31 Celsius in the southeast.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
We want to send some of those monthly financial stresses packing this August with your chance to be mortgage or rent-free for 12 whole months. We'll give you a cash lump sum that equals 12 of your monthly mortgage or rent payments, right up to an amazing £20,000. We'll also throw in an extra £5,000 on top of that for good measure. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entry start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB15 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 29th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact is Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Good morning to you. Jane Austen famously wrote a letter to her sister sharing her dislike for hot weather as it keeps one in a state of inelegance. As this Sunday ushers in another heat wave, she would doubtless be peeved. Welcome to Sunday with Michael Portillo, where, wrestling with the heat, we will aim for 2 hours of elegant discussion of politics, art and culture. A think tank predicts that the Chancellor will need to raise £41